MCP motions, so metacarpal phalangeal motions, as well as our PIP and VIP motions. Okay. We've got MCP flexion and extension that we measure, and then just flexion of the IP joints, PIP and DIP joints. It was asked last lab, how come we don't measure extension of our IP joints? Well, because usually you can't go past that unless you're crazy hyperextended or hypermobile. Okay, but most people can't go past extension when it comes to their IP joints. Also, it is not a functional movement.
Oh, yeah.
unless you're Jake and you've trained.
Challenge accepted. To do push-ups on your extended fingertips.
Well, there's that. Okay. So, for flexion and extension of our finger joints, we can use a variety of types of goniometers. We can use our standard baby goniometer, which we have quite a bit of, and so everybody gets to use those ones. We can use these little guys, which are fun to use and snazzy and whatnot. But they don't go this way because they don't know numbers. So you go this way because it's actually pointing at the numbers. Or we can use this guy. Okay? And I'll show you pretty much each one of those and how we use them and whatnot. So first I need a volunteer with some fingers. Got all of them?
I've got 10.
Fantastic. Okay. So our finger motions, our patient is actually going to be in a neutral position as far as forearm goes. So thumb up position, resting on the table, just like that. Okay? And if I wanted to use our baby Goni, just like this, then my fulcrum is going to be directly over or on the dorsal aspect of the joint that I am measuring. So if I'm going to measure her second MCP joint, I'm going to place it right over that MCP joint. If I want to measure her third, I'm going to place it over the third, fourth, fifth, so on. Okay? And my proximal arm is going to be lined up with the metacarpal of that finger or that digit that I am measuring. Okay? So again, if I'm measuring her index finger, then my fulcrum is going to be over that MCP joint of my index finger, or her index finger, and then proximal arm is going to line up with that second metacarpal. Okay? And then her distal, or the distal arm is going to be lined up with the phalange of that finger that I'm measuring. Okay. So, I get all lined up, and then I start applying my pressure, and notice I'm, again, allowing the other joints to go into extension or kind of do whatever they want to. But my pressure, as I do passive range of motion, is not going past the proximal interphalangeal joint. I'm not applying pressure at the middle phalanx or anywhere past that PIP joint. Because once I start doing that, then I'm not going to get adequate reading and it's going to be affecting the other joints. Okay? So I'm going to apply just at that proximal phalanx. And also, if you're close enough, and you can notice, there's a gap that's starting to occur between her knuckle and the two arms and the fulcrum of the Goni. I'm going to allow that, just like we did with the MCP or MTP joint of the great toe. Okay. And with this, I'm getting 103 degrees of MCP flexion. What's normal for MCP flexion? 90 to 100 is going to be normal. Okay. If I wanted to use this goniometer, then I line up the exact same points. There's only one side that has numbers, so that's where I'm going to be reading. Okay? And just read the numbers that make sense. So So if I push and push and push and push and push and push and push, what did we get with that last one? 103. And with this one, I'm getting 104, 105. Okay, but there's two sets of numbers, and if I'm looking at them, I can either get 105 or 75. And just looking at that angle, I know that it's more than 75 degrees. Okay, or I can use the metal one. Same points, get lined up with. Okay, and then with this one, I like this one just because of the fact that they're flat surfaces, so I don't have to worry about digging into the patient with an edge. So I can just push pretty darn hard. And I'm getting 112. And a lot of that just comes down to the fact that I'm able to push harder with this one and that flat edge versus me having to be careful and not dig in. Okay. Extension, going to be the exact same points that I'm lining up with. So I'm going to be on the joint, that MCP joint for my fulcrum, except for instead of being on the dorsal aspect, I'm going to be on the palmar aspect if I want to use one of these. If I'm going to use my baby Goni like this, I can stay on the dorsal aspect. Okay? So if I'm using the baby Goni, then I just line up all my points like I have previously, and I push her into extension. I allow that Goni to move so I don't dig into my patient. Moved too much. And for extension, I'm getting 78. 78 degrees. If I use the metal one, again, I'm going to go on the palmar side instead of being on that dorsal side. I'm going to push. And again, I would expect this one to be a little bit more just because I can push easier without having to dig into the patient. I'm getting about 84 degrees for that one. Okay, what's normal for extension of the MCP joint? 20 to 45. What?
That's normal?
Yes. You'll find that most healthy adults have more than 20 to 45 degrees. Again, this is a great example and a reminder to us that it's not just healthy adults that are included in this range of motion norm, but we've also got really old people who are included in it as well. We're going to lack that extension, okay? Or have a little less of that extension. So that's flexion extension of the MCP joint. So let's move on to flexion of the PIP and DIP. Again, you can measure both of those with the baby Goni. I'm just going to place my fulcrum directly over the joint. So if I'm measuring the PIP joint, fulcrum's directly over that PIP joint, and then my proximal arm is down the proximal phalange, or phalanx, excuse me, and the distal arm is going to be on that middle phalanx. And again, I want to make sure that I'm not applying pressure past and beyond that DIP joint. Let that gap happen. Embrace the gap. And what's normal for this motion? This is the 1 to 110, okay? And she was at 115. She was sitting pretty on that one. Again, I can use the metal one. If I use the metal one or the other one, just come right over the top and just to see if we get a difference. See how I did. Oh, wow. Yeah. Actually, I guess you were closer to 118. Even at that, you are on, with this one, you're at 128. And again, that's just because I feel comfortable applying more pressure than I did with the other. Okay? We'll just keep the metal one out. If I go down to the DIP joint, what's norm for this motion? 70 to 90. There. And she's beyond 90 at 95. 94. 94 degrees. Gotta work on that one.
Can't be that degree. Come on.
Okay. Any question on